Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some new products from Colorado Craft Company and Anita Jeram. I could not make a decision about what I wanted to use, so I'm using all three of these sets. This is the Sunset Rabbits, Bunny Love, and Forever Foxes. They're super cute. As are the vast majority of Anita's stamp sets. Before we get too far into it, I did just want to say that today is the last day for the giveaway for the blog hop. Winners will be announced on the 11th, and then it's also the last day to enter. If you shop through my affiliate link, they will pick a winner to give away a bundle too. So yeah, that information is over on the blog and it'll be linked below. So as I said, could not make a choice, which typically happens to me. And so sometimes I use all of the sets into one, card. And this time I was like, should I do this kind of scene or that kind of scene or this kind of scene? And so I decided that I was going to do 3 different scenes. Basically what I'm doing here is I stamped the first one down. That's going to be my background. This one is the second stamping, and I'm just, stamping it on Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock. This one I am going to stamp twice because this is going to be the one I'm going to die cut out. So I want to make sure that it's nice and bold. But I'm doing this for every one of the backgrounds. The reason is here the little bunnies, it's the same image. One of the bunnies is just the bunnies and one of them is the bunnies with like some grasses. I chose just the bunnies because I kind of wanted to put them on the top of a hill, and so the grasses behind them wouldn't make sense for what I was envisioning in my head. But anywho, so when I first started card making, I was always captivated by one layer scenes. I always have been. And nothing's changed. I've been doing it for how long now? 14 years, and literally nothing's changed. I still love a one layer scene. But dies do make it easier because then you don't have to do as much masking. So I do appreciate when I can get the dies. But you can do this with masking as well, but I'm going to show you how to do a daytime, a sunset, and a nighttime scene for just ink blending that you can put really any kind of stamps into. I chose these, like especially this one's called Sunset Rabbits. Like, did I even have a choice about the background that I did? Like, it had to be a sunset. Look at them, they're skipping off into the sunset. It's adorable. But so that way, like, especially if you're a beginner to card making, these are some things that you can try if you're interested in scene cards or one layer cards. So here I have some Eclipse masking tape. This is my preferred masking, as long as I'm not die cutting. You can use whatever you work with, like whatever you like, but in order for this to work, you do need to be able to see through it. So I am going to put my Eclipse paper right over my background, and then I'm going to follow the line of the stamp. So it doesn't have to be perfection, and you can end it however you would like. I could have made this flatter, just like regular flat ground, but I thought it would be really cute and more interesting as if they were kind of like in the bottom of a valley. And so that is how I did my line. There is no right or wrong way to do this. You can literally do whatever you want. Then from there, I'm just going to trim it out. You do want to keep both your top and bottom pieces. We will need both of them. But that's all this is the only masking we're going to do for this card. So now that I have this done, it was easier for me to see where the mask should go if I turned it upside down. So that is what I did. There I can see in the bottom left hand corner I have a little bit peeking out, but it should be okay because we're really going to be just keeping the ink blending really to the top. So let's talk about doing a soft sky. I like the Trinity Blender Buddies, but for a soft sky that kind of blends into clouds, a blender brush is a much softer blend. And so I am going to be starting with that so that I can get this really soft blend into white, which is going to give me the look of clouds. So what I'm doing is I'm just picking random spots for like peaks of my blue sky. There, again, is no right or wrong way to do this. It's really just going to depend on how much blue you want to be seen. I wanted enough blue for you to be able to recognize that it was a sky and that it wasn't just like all sky or all cloud. So I did kind of like 3 little areas that create a triangle. Tumbled glass is a very, very light distress ink. And so I wanted it to be super light. I am then going in with that blending buddy from Trinity Stamps, and I am deepening up the color in the centers, still leaving the edges super soft. And then from there, I'm going to add Salty Ocean and just a little bit of Blueprint Sketch. But again, I'm not going over the outer edges. I'm just sticking to the center to create that blue sky. You could just do the Salty Ocean if you wanted a little bit of a lighter sky. I wanted something that was going to be a little bit more prominent. And to be quite honest, it's because of the photography. Like if you don't have enough color on there when you go to take photos, the whole thing's going to be washed out and then you're not going to see any of the blue. So I made mine just a little bit darker so that I knew that it would show up. It would show up when I took my pictures. So I typically do my ink blending twice, because I feel like that gives me a better blend. But in this case, I only went back over the darkest color with the Salty Ocean and I left the tumbled glass just the way that it was. Before I remove this mask, I am going to put the top of it on. I'm just going to fit it right in like a puzzle piece. Now, when distress inks are wet, it can be very challenging to get your masks to stick to them. So I typically make sure that my masks are long enough to kind of wrap around the back. And then once that is in place, then I can go ahead and switch to the grass. I am using these same 3 greens for all of the grasses that we're doing today. I'm just going to be applying them in different amounts. So this is a day scene. We're going to have lots of light, bright green grass. So when I'm putting this on, I am adding a little bit of shadows to the bottom. But you're going to see we're going to add very, very little rustic wilderness because we want this grass to be, like I said, light and bright and daytime. So just a little bit on the corners, just really to add some interest and a line along the bottom. And then that's going to be all the dark we add. I will do this one twice. As I previously stated, I feel like that is a better blend. So I will blend that out with the Mowed Lawn. And then my lightest color is that Twisted Citron, which is just going to give everything like a nice overall blend. And then this background is done. So we'll remove the mask, which is always the magical part. And you can see we've got a sky, we've got some like hilly grasses. This looks adorable. We'll be coloring the images and putting them into their scenes later on because we do have the dies. If you wanted to do this without having the dies, you totally can. You would just need to cut a mask for your stamped image and you would put that down before you did any of your ink blending. For these little rabbits, there are 2 size suns, 2 size circles that are included in the set. I chose the smaller one and I chose to stamp it closer to the bottom. Again, if I was doing this as a 1 layer, I would have masked the bunnies, stamped my sun, and then masked the sun, then done my inking. And I have a lot of videos on how to do a 1 layer card if that's what you're looking for. I'm just showing you here how you can build some different backgrounds. That's all. Like really easy, really quickly use your ink blending to build some backgrounds. Because even though I can do it with Copic markers, I still prefer it to do with ink blending because I feel like the blend is better and it saves me on all that Copic ink. So here we're going to use a lot, a lot of different colors because the sky portion is so large. Like the bunnies are really tall. And so the sky portion is so large. I needed to have a lot of colors to keep that interest going. So I'm starting with Squeeze Lemonade, going up from the base and around that little sun. And then from there, I am going to start working towards the darker color, mustard seed, wild honey, picket fence. No, that's white. Picked raspberry, and seedless preserves. And then I even add a little villainous potion because I felt like the top wasn't dark enough. But you could do this more like a darker sunset and do a lot of these yellows, oranges, and pinks closer to the bottom. And then you could do purples and blues and even a black up at the top so that it really looked like the sun was almost down. This is like the sun's starting to go down and things are starting to change colors. One of the things to point out during this background blending is whatever color you put on last is the color you're going to see the majority of. So as you're going through and blending them out, you will see sometimes I go back and get the previous color because that is the one that I want on top. And you'll definitely see it on the way back through when we do the second blend, because I really wanted the pink to be on top and not the orange, but I was having to kind of go back and forth with the blending. And so I did I left it in because the purpose of this video is the backgrounds. Like I said, when I started, like I remember just hopping around all over trying to learn how to build these different backgrounds. Because it would be one video here from this creator and one video here from this creator. And so I just thought that maybe if you are a person who likes like cute little scene cards, and oftentimes for us that involves critters, sometimes it involves people, but that way you would have just like one video that you could go to for 3 different looks. And of course, I would encourage you to play around with it to kind of make it your own. You can switch up the colors, you can switch up the layouts, just whatever stamps you're using. Like I would just, when you're putting down your masks, you want to make sure you're following the lines that are already there. Like you want to follow those guidelines. So this one was pretty flat. That's why we just masked it straight across. And then here, I'm not even going to mask the sky. It's not necessary. I'm just going to let the green kind of blend up into that yellow because we really end up with quite a rainbow gradient here from the purple, pink, orange, yellow, green, which is really very pretty. So here for the grasses, we are going to allow our grasses to just get a little bit darker than we did last time because this is a sunset look. Things would be darker as the sun is going down. So we'll be adding more of that rustic wilderness, blending that out more with our mowed lawn. And then again, there'll be just a very little bit of that twisted citron where it's going to blend up kind of up into the yellow, but just barely, like not a ton. And then from there, the only thing that is left to do is just remove that little sun. And it is white, very white. So in order to kind of tap that down, I went in first with the one for Squeeze Lemonade. It was not dark enough. And then I went in with the leftover ink that was from the mustard seed. And that did work very well to just kind of tone it back. For the bunnies are going to be our night scene. And that's why I stamped them so far down, because I was like, I just pictured them like these 2 little bunnies in love, you know, laying under this huge expanse of sky with all of these stars. And so I did use the sun from the Sunset Rabbits to create a moon for them. And again, this is just, you don't have to put in the moon. You could absolutely just do the sky and the stars and it would still be a beautiful card. But here again, I'm just following the line that is given to me with the images. So it's kind of got this little bit of roundness to it, which is great, because then it's going to look like they're on the very tip top of this hill laying in the moonlight with all these stars. It's a very romantic bunny scene. So these, I think, are meant obviously for Valentine's Day. They're all like cute little couples and stuff like that. But I don't think that they have to be. Just like they have different sentiments in there and things, like you could pair them with different sentiments. Like I don't think they have to be for couples. So here you can see we had a lot of blues and a couple of purples. The purples aren't necessary. I've certainly done this with just blues before, but the purples do add a little bit more interest into the sky. If you're not into purple, you could also add pink, you could add teal, you could add green, basically anything that's going to work with a blue, you could add in. For the application of the ink, the moon is our light source. So that is going to be the lightest portion is going to be around the moon. And then it'll get darker as it moves out from there. So you saw I went in with the brush. And I know it looks a little bit green. It's just because the mask has yellow on it. It's not because the actual card is green. It just looks that way in the video. So once I went in with the brush and the tumbled glass, then I did a really light coat of Salty Ocean, just kind of all over. And now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to add some of those purples, starting with the Seedless Preserves and then going out to the Villainous Potion, which is a little bit darker. And again, this is just going to add some interest. You don't have to do this. You can leave the purples out. You can do your sky however you want. I chose to put a moon in there, which gives me a light source. But if you chose no light source, like you would just be lighter towards the horizon line and then darker as it went up. So now I'm going in with that blueprint sketch. I'm going right over the purples. I'm also going over the rest of the blue, leaving a halo around the moon, which would, be created there. You would be able to see more light closer to your light source. Then we have Chip Sapphire, which is going to go around mostly the edges. We are going to bring it in just a little bit. You'll see here in a second on the right hand side that the blending kind of gets away from me and it gets into the lighter area. Right away, before this has really any time to dry, I am going to go in with a lighter color blending brush and just blend that out right over top of it. If you have built up layers so that they're staying wet longer and you move quickly, you can blend those out. If you don't get it blended out in time, that's okay. Just wait until you have your second layer of color on to see if it blends it out on its own. If not, you can always make it a little bit darker. So the black goes just around the edges, and then once again, we're working from the darkest back out to our lightest. So going back in with that Chip Sapphire, and you can see there, in order to hide that blending, I do have to go a little bit darker in the corner. That's okay. It's still going to be a pretty card. It's still going to be a pretty scene. And then I just did these in exact reverse order. So instead of like the Chip Sapphire and then the blueprint sketch and all of that, like I did throw in the Villainous Potion, so you still can see that little bit of purple in the background, which I do like quite a bit. Purple or pink is usually my go-to addition if I'm going to add in another color into my sky. And then last but not least, we'll do the Salty Ocean. And I do this all over everything because it just adds back in that brightness. So everything isn't so like dreary and muted because I like bright colors. But if you wanted a more muted sky, you could probably, skip that step. In order to put in the stars, we're going to do a couple of things. The first one is we are just going to do a couple of splatters of just clean water. This is going to create some lighter stars that are very distant in the background. And then we're also going to create some stars with perfect pearls. This has a little bit of shimmer in it and it binds with water. So we're going to mix this up until it is a splatterable consistency. Is that a word? I don't know. It is now. Enjoy. So I'm going to do the perfect pearls. This is going to add some shimmer and some shine and some more stars. For the brightest stars, I am going to use some Copic Opaque White ink, and this will be like, it will be a bold, bright white. If you don't have this, you could use acrylic paint. If you don't have acrylic If you don't have acrylic paint, you could also just go in with a white gel pen and draw them in yourself. I've done all three of those methods. So obviously you want your brighter stars to be on the darker part. That's why you saw me kind of blocking off the moon. But then once I have the vast majority of the ink off of my paintbrush, I do go in closer to the moon and do a couple there. Remove the masks. There's our little moon. You can see it's shining, and then our grasses. So I am going to go ahead and put this mask in place, and then I'm going to do the grasses in the same colors that we've been using. The exception is that we are going to add so much more rustic wilderness because this is a night scene and our grass would be very dark. So in the beginning, very little rustic wilderness because we have a nice bright blue sky, sun is shining. In the middle one, it's a sunset, so it's a middle of the road level of darkness for the grasses, and this one is a night scene, so we're really going to add quite a bit of darkness because it's dark out. And it would look funny if we had like bright green grasses and a super dark sky, because those two things don't go together. So we're going to go ahead and remove that mask, and then here's what we're working with at this point. So here's all three of the backgrounds. Again, if you wanted them to be one layer, you absolutely could have masked them and done the ink blending over top of them. I'm not doing that. I am using dyes. So the actual coloring took really almost no time at all. To be quite honest, because they're smaller images. I think these sets are 4x4, which is great for the price point, honestly. And then the dies cut out the design even tighter than that. So they're not, you don't have to do a whole lot. For the trees you saw, I just added in like a light, medium, and a dark. For the grass, I'm going to do the same thing. Since we're using the dyes, well, at least I am, it only cuts out so much of the grasses. So I don't have to color in this whole area. I just need enough to make sure that my die cut is going to all be green grasses. I used the same greens for everything. I kept my grass really light because my grass is really light in my ink blending. And then I did the bushes dark and I did the trees kind of medium. In order to do the trees, Anita's style is very kind of loose, very storybook. So in order to color in the trees and not have them feel very stiff, you can see I'm holding my marker at kind of horizontally, and I'm using the side of it to press down and create some little like leaf shapes. And that is how I chose to fill it in. I'm still paying attention to if like there's large sections and adding shading behind those large sections and making sure that the front sections are lighter, but for the most part, I'm really just pressing the marker in at that horizontal angle so that it creates their own little leaf shapes. For the foxes, I went with a reddish brown, a much, much warmer brown. I went with the E30s family. I didn't want to go straight straight orange foxes, though you could. I wanted to do something that was a little bit more subtle. So they were, it's like a nod to the little red foxes, but they weren't overly red. So I colored them both pretty much the same. I did use a slightly darker color on the fox with the flower, the little boy fox. And then that was done. Moving on to the bunnies. Do not be scared. Don't be frightened. You have to remember that we have to color the images based on the scene that they're going to be in. And these bunnies are backlit, which means that most of the bunny will be in shadow. So when you're looking at this and you're like, Kelly, why are you coloring these bunnies so dark? They're the darkest bunnies I've ever seen. It's because they're going to be in shadow in our scene. So the part that the light is hitting, top of the tail, top of the back, top of the head, for this bunny on the right, top of his ears, top of his tushy, tops of their feet, that's where it's going to be the lightest portion. Everything under that is going to be dark. This little bunny on the left, I decided to give him, her. Let's go with her. I decided to give her some cute little spots just so that they both weren't just, plain white. They are white. I know they don't look white. Trust me. Just trust the process. I decided to give her some little spots just to kind of differentiate between the two little bunnies. And then for the flower, I did a red. This one for the grasses, I don't really have to do too much of anything because I know that the dye doesn't cut out that much. I went in with a C7 and then I went over top of that with my darkest green. And that is to create the shadow there because I know that it's going to be super dark in the scene. For these bunnies here, I chose to do them both white. So instead of being like, I don't know, husband, wife bunnies or a couple bunnies, they could be sister bunnies, they could be sister brother bunnies, like they could be whatever bunnies that you wanted them to be. But so I decided that I was going to go with just the gray and white. This one, the light source is in the center, so the shadows are going to be on the left and right hand side because that is how the light source is going to shine out. So the middle of it is going to have the most light, which is the area that we actually want to leave white. Everything else on the outside is going to get progressively darker the further it gets away from the light source. So that is why you see me coloring it the way that I am. For the grasses, I really did not have to do too much of anything. I drew just kind of like a dark line at the very bottom. Again, I've looked at the dye and I know that it isn't going to cut down too super far into the grasses, so I'm not overly worried about it. With that said, that's all of them colored. We're going to cut them out with their coordinating dyes, and then we'll be able to put them into their scenes, which is the most exciting part, quite honestly. And I'm using pixie tape to do that. It's my favorite low-tack tape. I do hope that this is helpful for you guys. If you are new or if you're just getting into scene building, like, look at how cute this is. That's so cute. I love a scene card. I cannot stop myself from loving it so much. And no big shock, the bunnies are my favorite. Is it because of the blue sky? Maybe. Is it because it's a very dramatic card? Possibly. Is it because I got to put in a little shadow? Who knows? But I love them all, but the bunnies, the nighttime bunnies are it, man. That's where it's at for me. I would be very interested to know which one's your favorite. Please tell me. So I'm going to glue them all together, and then I'm going to show you the cards as is. Now, I'm not going to show you the stamping of the sentiments because this is a very long video, but I did want you to see what the cards would look like without anything additional. I don't love a white outline. This is not a state secret here on my channel. So I typically do color mine in, and these cards were no exception. So I just went through. I'm not going to show you all of it because it's basically the same thing. It's just finding the colors that will blend the best with your ink blending. And there is no way for me to tell you how to do that outside of just looking at the colors that you have on, like your Copic chart, because your ink blending is going to be different than my ink blending. So it isn't going to be the same. So this is them. This is all of them completed. I think that they are beautiful just like this. You do not need to add anything extra. However, I am extra. And I like my cards to look like my cards. And so I am going to add in some additional elements. Feel free to completely ignore this and stop the cards right where we left them. Feel free to try this in its entirety. Feel free to take one element or two elements, whatever you're comfortable with or whatever kind of look you're going for. There isn't a right or a wrong way. This is just what I like to do. I like to make them look like mine. I want you to look at my card and be like, that's a Kelly card. So for the trees, I just did some very simple branches, nothing too crazy. In order to blend in the trees, I am doing that same horizontal pressing that we talked about before to create a little leaf shape in the same colors. I'm doing just the same exact thing. I put in one tree on the left-hand side. I put in two trees on the right-hand side. And then I'm also going to do some little flicks of grass in order to really kind of hone that image in and draw the eye to the foxes. I'm going to add the majority of my darker grasses on the outside edge and my lighter grasses in the middle, which will help push the eye to those cute little foxes. And then that one is going to be done. For this one, like I've colored in the background, I'm really only just going to be adding some little grasses and some taller ones, like some ones that look more like leaves, because I'm going to be adding some flowers into this. I'm also going to add a shadow. Shadows look amazing and they can be scary, but they don't have to be, because really you're just following the reverse shape, like literally the reverse shape of what is stamped there. Most of the time though, and this was the case for me when I first started putting in those shadows, I almost never put them in dark enough because I'm scared. So I usually start with a lighter color, which is fine. Start with a lighter color until you're comfortable. And then if I need to, I can darken it up by putting down a darker color or by putting down a neutral. Like I did in this case, I put another gray over top of it to make it darker. I really wanted them to be laying in a little flower field because I thought that would be just too stinking cute. So I'm using my white gel pen. I'm just doing a series of 4 or 3 dots, and then I'm tapping it with my finger so that way it's not as bold and it is a softer look, but it does fill out the scene nicely. For these little bunnies, again, you can see I'm not very confident with my shadow, so I am starting out with a very light color. You could barely see this. This would be super easy to cover up if it goes like awry. So I am putting that in with the lightest color. Then once I'm comfortable, I'm going to go in and reinforce it with my mid-tone. I will not be making this as dark as the previous shadow because it is not as dark out. We're at dusk. We're not at nighttime, where we would have this huge backlit light. We just want a little bit of shadow to kind of reinforce that the sun is in front of them and is shining into their faces and everything behind them is a bit darker. And then again, doing the flicking of the grasses. I do have videos on how I do that if you want to see something a little bit more up close about that. But otherwise, pretty simple, just flicking. and using the same, using those same colors. So after that, I did go in and do some highlights with my white gel pen. I got their whiskers, I got their little tails. I went right over the black line of their tails to help them look a little fluffier. And then I did just, add some accents like on their ears, on top of their hands, on the sun, things like that. Again, this is a take it or leave it kind of step. And then the same thing for these little bunnies where, wherever the moonlight is hitting, I definitely added a highlight. I did go over, with some dots and some lines over their tails to make them look kind of fluffy. And I did not there was no need to put super strong highlights on my foxes because it's a day scene, but I did add some little white lines into their tails, and for the boy fox, or what I perceive to be the boy fox, on his little chest. I added some clear shimmer. The only place I used the white shimmer was on top of the sun. I used a white shimmer pen. Everything else is clear and just kind of like what I want highlighted or where the light was hitting. And then you can see the sentiments here that are all stamped out. These are all included in their consecutive sets. And that's it. That's all 3 cards. So I really hope this helps you with your scene building. Please let me know if you have any questions. I just would encourage you to practice and try. If this is something that you're, interested in creating, please let me know and I'll try to do more of them. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.